What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the show, Under Center with Abelson, presented by the Real Spiel podcast. Week 8 of college football is officially in the books. Obviously, another incredible weekend of college football. Just when you think you have everything figured out with some of these teams, just when you think, 8 weeks in that you're starting to get some clarity, they go out here, surprise you, lay some eggs, blow some leads, throw out some duds, and everything you thought is out the window. We're talking about you guys, Miami. We're talking about you guys, Texas Tech. A lot of other exciting action across the country. Mizzou pulling one out in Auburn. Texas barely surviving in Lexington. So we will go over some of these. Not going to make this episode too long. There's a lot of games to go over, so just want to quickly touch on, a plethora of the games across the country. So like, comment, subscribe. We'll be quick in and out. Also want to go over my new updated. We'll go over the AP top 25, and then we'll go over my top 25. Again, like, comment, and subscribe, share, and let's get into the episode. Man, oh man, where do we start? I guess we could start with, I think, probably the biggest shocker and upset of the weekend. The game that I was at, Louisville versus Miami. Louisville gets the upset win over number 2 Miami at Hard Rock Stadium. First and foremost, Jeff Brom is that dude. He is a dog. One of the most underrated coaches in college football. When everybody's talking about these coaches, we're talking about Ryan Day. We're talking about Signetti now. We're talking about Dan Lanning, Kirby Smart. Not talking about Jeff Brom a lot, man. And I don't know why, because this is just kind of what he does, This is one of the best play callers in all of the country, and I think that was on display, headed into this game. Louisville obviously scored on their first two drives. That opening drive, they marched down the field. Miller Moss is making plays on time, on target. 4th and 2 at like the 7 or 8 yard line. Jeff Brom does a fake field goal to get it on the 1 yard line, punches it in. He's putting 3 quarterbacks out there. He's doing a lot of different stuff, but again, he's just not getting talked about enough. Hey, I don't mind. I will gladly take an underrated Jeff Brom. Keep all the scavengers away from all these coaching jobs that are about to open up. Let him continue to be underrated. But no, nonetheless, great win by Louisville. I think this makes Jeff Brom 4-0 versus top 5 teams in the regular season. Like I said, he's a big game hunter. In my preview, I'm not gonna lie, as a Louisville fan, it does pay me to say that I did pick Miami. I thought Louisville could win. I thought there was a scenario and definitely a way Louisville could win, but realistically, I did pick Miami. But we did hit on Louisville to cover the spread, plus 13.5. Whether Miami won, I did think it was going to be a close game or just a competitive game, just because Brom, whenever he plays these elite teams, i.e. he either wins or it's always close and competitive. Last year when we played Miami, it was a 45-7, or it was a single-digit win, 52-45. When we played Notre Dame last year on the road, 24-17 or 31-24. And Louisville had a chance with the ball with less than a minute left to go down and to try and tie the game. Clemson last year, obviously we won. The year before, Notre Dame, he either wins these big games or if he loses, they're close and competitive games. So I definitely thought that Louisville could be competitive, and I loved the 13.5. But yeah, the reason I've been so high on Miami this year has just been their line of scrimmage play, offense and defensive line. I've said on record multiple times they have the best defensive line combination in the country. Ruben Baines on the defensive line, elite offensive line, run game. And then what's crazy is in my preview, I talked about how Carson Beck has been kind of just playing perfect for the way Miami's roster is built. He hasn't had to do too much, hasn't had to create had to put his team on his back. The run game's been good. They've been able to protect him. The defensive line's been great. So he's just been out there kind of just having to not do too much, and that kind of all went out the window. Louisville, very, very, I don't even know if you want to call it I think it is underrated. I mean, Louisville, I think PFF, Pro Football Focus, rated us as the third best defensive line. The defensive line of Louisville has just been stellar this year. Absolutely elite. Although we didn't get home on Carson Beck and get a sack, you could tell the pressure of Louisville was getting to him constantly, getting in his face, constantly rushing him. He just looked uncomfortable and out of sorts and not poised in the pocket. And obviously that led to multiple turnovers, with Louisville picking him off 4 times, really 5 times if they didn't call a bullshit roughing the passer. Nonetheless, they still picked him off 4 times. And again, all those throws were overthrown, thrown in triple coverage, underthrow, just not thrown in the right places. And I think that was due to the pressure that Louisville was able to get on them. Also, the fact that Miami only ran for 63 yards. Again, I've talked so highly about this offensive line, and I think it's one of the best in the country. But for you to only run 63 yards with that type of talent, again, I think that goes to show how good and elite Louisville's defensive line was. The number one key that I had for Louisville in my preview was this game was going to start and end with the offensive line of Louisville. If the offensive line could not show up, and I said if the offensive line doesn't show up and plays how they've been playing all year, that Miami would blow them out. And I did also say how I think Braum, because Louisville had a bye week the week before, and I was just saying how I think Braum was probably just on the offensive line's asses throughout that bye week and was just making it a point of emphasis to protect Miller Moss and give him time to throw. Because again, Miller Moss, yeah, he's made some questionable decisions this year, but I think a majority of why he's been struggling so much is because the run game hasn't been there and he hasn't had time to throw. And like I said, I think Braum was going to make that a point of emphasis, and boy, was that offensive line the point of emphasis. Obviously, the defense was, but that offensive line was right there as well. I mean, to not give up a sack to that defensive line with Ruben Bain, Akeem Mesidor, they got all that talent, and for them, we only gave up 1 sack. My apologies. To only give up 1 sack to that offensive line that defensive line is insane. And to be able to run the ball as effectively as we did run it, this was the best game up until that fumble, which I feel for Isaac Brown, because this is the game that we've been kind of waiting for this year. He's been battling some injuries. The offensive line hasn't been good, so not really able to protect him. And for him to have his best game against that defense, against that defensive line, I think goes to show the testament of how well the offensive line played. Isaac Brown ran for 113 yards. Some huge chain movers on that 3rd and 10. That really surprised the hell out of me. Great call by Jeff Braum to go for a 20-yard gain late in that third, early fourth quarter. But again, he did fumble, and I didn't see him for the rest of the game, which I really feel for him because he was starting to play extremely well. But that's been 2 costly fumbles that could have costed us, against Virginia. He had that fumble on the pitch for the scoop and score. Miami ended up going down and scoring on the very first possession after that and cutting it to 3 points late in the fourth quarter. So that could have been a real game changer. So hopefully he gets that together. We need him out there. I don't think we can go really far without him. But again, getting back to the offensive line, that offensive line was the difference. Miller Moss had time to throw. He was getting, and also great play call by Jeff Braum to get some of the routes that he got, especially for Chris Bell on those 2 touchdowns, those shallow drag routes across the middle, just those easy routes for him to get the ball out quick and fast. Because when you're playing a great defensive line like Miami, the longer you hold on to that ball, the more you're going to get sacked. And especially when your offensive line has been struggling a little bit, you don't want them to be in a position to where they're having to block for a long time. So credit to Miller Moss for completing those passes, for playing well. First game this year with no turnovers. Granted, there was a throw or 2 that almost got picked off, but no turnovers for Miller Moss. We'll take that any day of the week. And again, just doing a great job getting the ball out on time, on target, into your playmakers' hands, and letting them do what they do, like Chris Bell, man. I just love the way he's kind of stayed the course of this Louisville team. Over the last couple years, Louisville has hit on some transfer portal guys. Jamari Thrash, 3 years ago, from I forgot where he came from, and then Ja'Cory Brooks last year. Both were 1,000-yard receivers. Chris Bell kind of patiently waiting his turn as that number two receiving receiver. Got asked, obviously got asked to be the main dude this year and has stepped into that role with flying colors. This is his third straight game with 130 or 40, with 140 receiving yards. Back-to-back games with 2 touchdowns, 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. I think he's easily been playing himself into a top 5 receiver in college right now, and like first-round draft pick potentially. So yeah, can't say enough about that gutty win from Louisville. This could have been a very, very critical deciding kind of factor into the season. Obviously, they had that tough loss versus Virginia. First ACC loss, and then the very next game you have is against Miami, the number 2 team in the country. That second ACC loss would have very well, I wouldn't say like ended their playoff chances or just kind of like their aspirations of getting deep into the season, but 2 losses in the ACC, especially when Georgia Tech and Virginia seem to have easier schedules for the rest of the year with no ACC losses, for SMU to not have any ACC losses, it would have been a very, very tough hill to climb. So to go in there, to get that win, to only remain at 1 ACC loss, that's very impressive. And if you're Miami, you really don't control your own destiny anymore. Again, with those 2 teams, and now that Louisville has the tiebreaker. And Louisville's schedule, I'm not going to say it's easy, but it's manageable. Clemson, I think that Clemson game, which is at home Friday night, late night game, and then they have SMU. Those are going to only be the 2 games that really raise any flags for me. I know Clemson lost again, obviously without Cade Klubnik, but they seem to have been starting to find a groove with Cade Klubnik, so that's still a game that I'm going to worry about. And SMU on the road the very next week, that's also a game that's going to raise my eyebrows a little bit. But if we play the way we played against Miami, I think Louisville can beat any team in this conference, and if we get a chance to go to the ACC, I think they can win the conference. So yeah, great win by Louisville. Also, before we go any further, I do just want to say we had another great weekend with our picks. We went 4-1. Let's see. We hit on 4-1. We hit on Georgia -7.5. We hit on Notre Dame -9.5. We hit on Louisville +13.5. We hit on Vandy -2.5. Obviously, Tennessee is the one that got sold. Tennessee, we'll get into that game, but Tennessee just, defense struggled a lot against Alabama, and they could not cover the +8.5. So, hey, I'll take it. 4-1. That officially brings us over 500. We are now at 24-23, 25-24 on our picks for this year. In the preseason, I said if I can stay at or slightly above 500, I'll be happy, man. Because if you're above 500, that means you're in the green and you're not losing money. So I'll take that. We'll talk about LSU Vandy. Great win by Vandy, -2.5. This is one that when the initial line came out, I didn't want to overthink this because that's one of those lines where you question, like, hey, what does Vegas know? Like, do they know something that I don't? Because I think LSU has been overrated all year. On my top 25, I had them at 11, but when I was going over it, I said I don't think LSU is the number 11 team in the country. I don't think they're that good, but I just really didn't know where to put them. And since they only had 1 loss up to the point, I didn't want to put them, at 20 or 17 or 19 or whatever. But I did not think they were the 11th best team in the country, I guess it's my AP poll, so I can put them wherever the hell I think I want them to be. And I also have thought about Vanderbilt and how underrated they've been. In my AP poll after they lost to Alabama, I think they were the 12th team in the country, or 12th or 13th in the country, and then I think the AP dropped them to like 18, 17, 18, or 19, somewhere around there. And in my poll, after they lost to Bama, I dropped them like 2 spots. Because again, I think they are a legit team. And it's weird that people have kind of thought fraudulent things of them. I know that Virginia Tech isn't as good of a win as it looked like, but they dominated them on the road. They beat South Carolina handily, and again, that South Carolina win's not starting to look as great anymore. And they played Alabama close. If it wasn't for 2 fumbles in their own red zone area, that game could have, not fumbles, but turnovers. They had a fumble. Diego Pavia fumbled, and then he threw an interception. If it wasn't for those 2 turnovers and a literally 30-second left on the clock cover or touchdown by Alabama to make it, an 11-point game or whatever it was, a 15-point game, that game would have been a lot more closer. So Vandy getting a great, great win. This game was a little surprising because we finally got like an okay-ish LSU offensive game. I think this is the most points that they've scored, 24 against a Power 4 team all year. I think every other game they hadn't scored above 20 against Power 4 teams. So this is the most they've scored. Garrett Nussmeier played well. They scored on their first 2 possessions of the game. The first opening possession, they drove down the field. Garrett Nussmeier was making great passes. They got a field goal. The very next possession, they got a touchdown. They even missed a field goal with like less than a minute left in the second quarter before the halftime, so that could have been more points. They played pretty well offensively. Garrett Nussmeier threw for 240 yards, 2 touchdowns. Offense definitely played well enough to win, but it was the defense that kind of lost them this game. Specifically the run defense, which is a little surprising because LSU's defense has been why they've only lost 1 game. Their offense really hasn't been giving them much support this year, and their defense is the reason they were still 5-1. You know, so to see Vanderbilt, they played. I think they played a great offensive game within their system because when you look at the box score, especially like Diego Pavia, he threw for 160 yards and a touchdown, but that's not where he's really the most effective. That's not where he's gonna take you out. You know, he's not going to be throwing for 350 yards and 4 touchdowns. The ground game is what really gave LSU troubles. They could not stop the run to save their lives. I think, Vanderbilt ran for 239 yards. Diego Pavia ran for 86 yards. Young ran for 82. And those 86 yards from Pavia were big 86 yards, man. It just felt like, every time he was getting near a sack, he just evade, get loose, and take it for a big gain. That first opening drive where he ran it for the touchdown. Again, making timely runs and timely throws. Yeah, LSU just could not stop the run game. That was literally it, man. Because, again, Vanderbilt never really threatened LSU through the air. And then when you pair that with LSU really only running for 100 yards, which their run game has been very questionable this year. So I feel like 100 yards at this point for LSU seems like a lot of running yards for them. But obviously, that's not really. You want to be able to run for more. But that Vandy defensive front is solid. That's another underrated defensive line in the country. Vandy's defensive line, very solid unit, big guys up front. They were able to limit, the runs. They sacked Garrett Nussmeier, a couple times. He had negative 13 rushing yards, so it looks like he got sacked a few times. How many times? He got sacked twice. Yeah, he got sacked twice, 5 tackles for losses. So that defensive line for Vandy showed up, played well at home. Diego Pavia played well. Vanderbilt got the win, and I hope people start to take them a little more serious, a little more legit, because I think Vanderbilt is a good team. They might not be, the top echelon of SEC teams in terms of like Texas A&M and then Alabama and Georgia, but they're definitely right there. They're definitely a tier 2 SEC team this year. So shout out to Vandy for getting that big win, and thank you for helping me cover -2.5. Notre Dame and USC. This was a game where, although my spread barely covered because it was 9.5 and they won by 10. This is a game where like I was like pretty confident in Notre Dame. Like I didn't. Granted, I am. I don't want to admit it. I'm definitely a USC hater. I have never bought into USC since Lincoln Riley's been there. Never, and I just don't know if I will at this point. But yeah, like I think this game for USC was what people thought the Michigan game was going to be, but it just so happened to come a week later. Because I mean, USC just got absolutely gashed in the trenches, bro. Absolutely gashed. And it started early, like on like the first like two possessions. Jeremiah Smith ran for like a 70-yard touchdown or 70-yard run. 2 plays later, punched it in for a touchdown, and he was just going absolutely crazy. The best, if not one of the best running backs in the country. Price, they had such a great 1-2 punch. That kick return that he had, I think, is what really flipped the game because USC, although they were giving up a lot of run yards, they did do a good job. They did a great job of staying in it, keeping it close on the road. But that Notre Dame defense just was doing too much. I think we finally saw, a bad Jaden Mayavan game. This guy, he's still kind of an inexperienced quarterback. This was on the road, a night game in Notre Dame. It's definitely a tough crowd and a tough environment. And I think it showed. I think he threw for 3 interceptions, 2 or 3. He threw for 2 interceptions, and both of them were pretty bad interceptions. And the run game wasn't there as much as you would have thought. Again, that's also why I didn't really like USC because they're missing their top 2 backs. One of them, I think he tore his knee up for the year, and the other one, he had tightrope surgery. So they're starting a true freshman at running back, walk-on at that. And granted, he did come in and play very, very, very well against Michigan. I just think Notre Dame is a better version of Michigan. I think they're tougher. I think they're more physical. They have a better run game, and then they have a quarterback who's actually better. I think C.J. Carr is better than Bryce Underwood at this point. And the defense of Notre Dame, that was one of the questions I had for Notre Dame was, is their defense legit? Like, because the first couple games they struggled against Miami, against Texas A&M, but over the last few games they've been starting to turn it around. Getting takeaways, I think they have 7 interceptions. Before this game, they had like 7 interceptions, I think the last 2 games. But I didn't know how legit that was because of their schedule. They've beat Purdue, NC State, Boise State, so they really hadn't beaten anybody for me to know the validity of their defense. But I think this was a great test, and this was a really good game and proved that I think their defense is starting to finally turn it around, and maybe those first 2 games were just maybe we're knocking off some rust and just some outliers, but Notre Dame's defense really turned up, really impressed. Their run game, it felt like they got back to Notre Dame. It felt like they got back to Notre Dame ways, what made them so successful last year. Shout out to Notre Dame, big time win. Because again, this was probably their only really tough remaining game for the rest of the schedule, barring any of the teams come out of absolutely nowhere. I think they played Pitt at the end of the year, and I think that could be maybe a tricky one. But this was really their last true test, and a true test they had to pass because obviously if they have 3 wins with that schedule, you lose to the top 3 teams you play, you're done. So way to keep the playoff hopes alive. They're still in it. USC again. I'm just not all the way bought in on USC. Again, USC's 5-2. It's not like they're bad by any means. They're 5-2. They got a good win, against that Michigan, but against Illinois, against kind of Notre Dame, those tough physical teams, it seems like they still have some issues. It still seems like they've come a long way, but it does seem like they still have some issues. But yeah, great win by Notre Dame. Georgia, Ole Miss. This was another one that we got right. Obviously, Georgia had them to cover -7.5. This was a. First of all, this is an incredible game. Incredible game. If you love offense, This is your type of game. If you like defense, maybe not so much. But Georgia got one of my keys for Georgia was for them to get out to a fast start. They didn't get out to a slow start per se, but it was 7-3 after the first quarter. Not a big hole, obviously, but still, like, I felt like Georgia should have set the tone. I mean, both teams were just trading blows in that first half and the first three quarters. Every time one team would score, the other one would counter. Every time the other team would counter, the other one would score. Chambliss, he played incredible, barring the circumstances. That was one of the questions that I had for Ole Miss, and was one of the reasons why I kind of liked them to lose, was because this was Chambliss's first time ever starting on the road in D1 college football. I heard some stat that like the total attendance for the entire year at his Division II school was 70,000. He played one game with a higher attendance, 93,000 at Georgia Stadium. But he held himself well, played extremely well. Definitely gave his team a chance to win. So kudos to him for that. But again, man, Georgia, it's just one of those teams, man. You have to take them out 10 times just to win one time, man. I mean, it just does not matter the circumstances. It doesn't matter what's going on. It just always feels like they're gonna find a way to win, and they did. It's kind of weird that we're in a season where Georgia's offense is arguably better than their defense, man. If you're a Georgia fan, you're definitely happy about Carson Beck going to Miami. Obviously, Carson Beck throwing 4 interceptions this week, and Gunnar Stockton literally going 12 for 12 with 3 touchdowns in the second half. And that was one of my questions with Georgia coming into the season. I was not that I thought like Gunnar Stockton was bad or anything, but he had never played. He never played, so like you didn't know what type of player he was going to be. You didn't know how well he was going to play, and he has definitely quieted all the naysayers this year with his play. I mean, against Ole Miss, against Tennessee, dropping 41 against Tennessee on the road, dropping 42 against Ole Miss, number 5 team in the country. Like, he's proved that he's legit. He's proved that he has deserved that starting spot 100%. But yeah, it was the story of this game. I did say that Georgia's defense was not better than their offense, but their defense is kind of why they won this game. Because again, like, this was a shootout. I think the first punt came in the fourth quarter. I think a team punted for the first time either way in the fourth quarter. So again, like, there was just no defense to be found, but Georgia's defense made the plays they needed to in that fourth quarter. They got a couple 3-and-outs. I don't know if they forced a turnover, but they did get a couple 3-and-outs. That last one to give Georgia the ball back to end up driving the field to kick a field goal to stretch the lead to 8 points. And again, they held Ole Miss scoreless in the fourth quarter. And I think there was a stat that said like going into like late in the fourth quarter, Ole Miss only had like a single yard of offense in that second half. So again, Georgia increasing the defensive pressure when they needed to. Gunnar Stockton playing extremely well. Again, going 12 for 12, 3 touchdowns. Incredible game. We're just gonna kind of rapid fire some of these next few games. Again, didn't want this to run too long. Tennessee versus Alabama. This is the one we were wrong about. I thought, because again, Alabama, they just won their 4th straight ranked matchup. But again, they haven't been. It's weird because it feels like their performance have been dominant, but like they haven't been blowing any teams out. Vandy, again, outside of that late cover, it was easily going to be like a 9 or 11 point win. I think like a 9-point win. And then when it came to Georgia, they beat Georgia by 3. They beat who else did they play? They played Missouri. Yeah, they beat Missouri by 3. So they haven't been blowing teams out or anything, and that's why I thought this game would be closer. I had Alabama winning. I just thought that Tennessee offense, Alabama's ability, not lack of ability, but their kind of troubles defending the run this year, and also their troubles of running the ball this year. I thought that would have presented some problems for them a little bit, and that could have kept things close, and it kind of did. Alabama got out to that 16-7 lead. Tennessee's driving down the field in the second quarter with what, like less than like 10 seconds left, no timeouts. Joey Aguilar throws that flat route or that flat out or whatever, and boom, interception, pick six to the house. That takes the lead from 16-7 to what, 20, whatever it was, 22, 23-7. I mean, they kind of did a good job kind of staying in it with giving themselves a chance in the second half, but then eventually, I mean, the Alabama defense was just hell-bent tonight. They played extremely, extremely well. This one hurt because I did cook up a parlay on this one. I ended up just taking, because I don't like betting the spreads that Vegas gives me. For the sake of the channel, I bet against the spread, but when I'm betting on my own, I usually always alternate the spreads in some way, shape, or form. Especially if I'm doing a few, 3, 4, 5 leg parlay, because, the difference between minus 110 odds and minus 160 is not really that much. I don't really care about the few extra dollars I can make on a bet. So I took Tennessee plus 13.5, and the last drive, man. The last freaking drive. Tennessee, because Tennessee had the ball. They got down to, I think, the red zone. I think they went for it on fourth and didn't get it. Alabama got the ball back, ran it 3 times, called timeouts, and then Tennessee got the ball back again. So I thought I had another chance with 2 minutes left, and they get all the way down the field. A couple penalties, a couple good plays. They get all the way down to the 2-yard line. They had a pass interference. I got them down there. They ran, 3 plays, and I think they got another pass interference to reset the downs. And then they ran it again, or they ran a couple other plays, and then, they didn't have any timeouts left. And on the very last play, they run it. The running back stretches over, and he's literally just a couple inches short, his knees down. Obviously, there's 8 seconds at that point on the clock. Time runs out. And just like that, I was a couple inches away. It was like a $10. It was like plus 2,000 odds, like a $10 to win, like $250 or something. So yeah, that one hurt. That one hurt a little bit. But yeah, Alabama. I mean, I think they have easily put themselves in the top 3 conversation. We can go over my AP or my top 25 here in a minute. So I'll give you guys an idea of where Alabama has jumped up to. But yeah, let's rapidly go over some of the other action across the weekend. Nebraska just absolutely laying a goose egg to Minnesota. North Carolina losing in that heartbreaker to Cal. Georgia Tech, man, this is another one I didn't want to overthink. Duke was favored by 3.5. It was on the road. They're a good team, but I didn't want to overthink this, and I didn't overthink this. This was one of the legs on the parlay I was just talking about. I had Georgia Tech money line, they were plus 180 or something. So I was like, why not? Michigan with a big time bounce back and a big time win against Washington. Let's see, what else do we have? Oklahoma, man, this was another one. I know some people were kind of calling upset alert, Cocktober, South Carolina at home, but I didn't think this one had any potential, man. South Carolina I talked about this in my preseason. I talked about how last year was potentially a fluke year for South Carolina, and how I just didn't really trust them. I didn't really think they were gonna repeat what they did last year. They hadn't. John Mateer looked a lot more comfortable today, especially with his arm, his timing. Oklahoma getting the big win. Ohio State really just playing kind of another nobody. I'm not going to discredit what Ohio State's doing because they've been dominating all year, but I mean, can they get a little bit of a challenge? And they're really not going to get challenged. I know, obviously, they can't control the fact that Penn State is just completely ass. But, I mean, Washington is still a pretty good team. And Texas obviously isn't what we thought they would be. Illinois was, I think, a consensus overrated team. I just, like I said last week, I just think it's going to be a situation where we get into the playoffs or a big game, maybe against Michigan or in the playoffs, and we see Ohio State start to look a little shaky just because they've been able to coast kind of all year. Again, I still don't want to discredit what they've done. They've been playing extremely well. That's just something to keep an eye on. That is something to keep an eye on. Let's see. Oh, obviously, Arizona State taking down Texas Tech in a great game. I dropped ASU last week, but I specifically said this was because of Sam Levitt. Because if the Sam Levitt was playing against Utah, I think there's a very good chance that Arizona State would have beaten Utah. But a great win with Sam Levitt back in the lineup. Florida State, they just suck. I mean, there's nothing else to kind of say about that. They suck. I mean, you've lost 4 straight ACC games. Like, you've won 1 ACC games in the last 2 years. Like, I don't know what else to say. But again, that's enough yapping. Let's get to our top 25 and the AP top 25, and then let's get out of here. As far as the AP top 25 goes, we got Ohio State at 1, Indiana at 2, Texas A&M at 3, Alabama at 4, Georgia at 5. They jump up to 5. Oregon at 6, Georgia Tech jumps up to 7, Ole Miss at 8, Miami drops down to 9, Vanderbilt at 10, BYU at 11, Notre Dame at 12, Oklahoma at 13, Texas Tech at 14, Missouri at 15, Virginia at 16, Tennessee 17, USF at 18, Louisville jumps up to 19, LSU jumps up to 20, or it jumps down to 20, Cincinnati at 21, Texas at 22, Illinois at 23, Arizona State at 24, and then Michigan at 25. As far as my rankings go, we have Ohio State at number 1. We have Indiana at number 2. We got Alabama at number 3. I think Alabama deserves to jump up to number 3. Even though Texas A&M is still undefeated, I think Alabama's 4 straight wins against ranked teams just holds a little more weight than the undefeated record, especially when they haven't played each other. Texas A&M at 4. Georgia at 5. Ole Miss at 6. We have Oregon at 7. We have Vandy at 8. I have Miami at 9. I still think that's not a bad loss. Yes, Miami's supposed to be a much better team, but a loss to Louisville, that's not a bad loss. They did get handled, but Louisville's a good team, and I'm not going to drop Miami too far with one loss, especially because I still think their resume is one of the better resumes in the country. They beat Notre Dame. They beat South Florida, who's a ranked team. Florida, who, I mean, that doesn't hold as much weight, but they still have a pretty solid resume, and that's why I still have them slightly above Georgia Tech, because if we're being honest, Georgia Tech should have a loss. I mean, that Wake Forest game was just abysmal that they won. I mean, dude was clearly over. Like, they should have lost that game. They're still undefeated, and they didn't. But I do still kind of value Miami's resume slightly above Georgia Tech. So that's why I have them just slightly above. I have Missouri at 11, Oklahoma at 12, Texas Tech dropped to 13. We got BYU at 14 after, I'm tripping. I am tripping. BYU, I am putting over, I think that was a legit typo. I'm putting BYU at 13. I'm putting BYU at 13 and Texas Tech at 14. BYU undefeated, got a ranked win. They beat Arizona last week. That's a pretty solid, Big 12 team. So we got BYU at 13, Texas Tech at 14, Louisville at 15, or we got 12, 13, 14. Yeah, Louisville at 15. Notre Dame at 16. That was a good win against the USC team, against a very solid USC team. Again, I moved them up. Last week, Notre Dame was at 20 in my rankings, so they jumped from 20 to 16, with a top win. So we got Notre Dame at 16. We got LSU. They dropped to 17. Virginia at 18. I know some people might look at, having Louisville 15 and Virginia at 18, even though Virginia beat them. I don't think head-to-head, when resumes are comparable, is the only deciding argument. Obviously, I mean Virginia beat Louisville by 3 in overtime, but I think that Miami win holds way more weight than that Florida State win, especially now at this point when Florida State went on to lose to two more um, two more ACC teams after Virginia beat them. And I do just think Louisville's, if I had to power rate them, I think Louisville is just, slightly. I think Louisville's a better roster and just a better team. And they have a better win, and they have a win against Pitt as well. I'm just comparing, Louisville's resume to Virginia's. They have a win against Pitt as well. Virginia struggled with Washington State. Louisville has a win against James Madison, who's, I think, in the AP poll, they're like officially like 30th in the country now, like based off the other receiving votes. They're a 5-1, 6-1 group of 5 team, extremely good in that in the Sun Belt Conference. Got a chance to win that one. So that's why I have Louisville ahead of Virginia, even though Virginia beat Louisville. We got USF at 19, Arizona State at 20. Sorry, while I was editing this, some of my numbers are off, so I got to go back and fix it. We got Cincinnati at 21. Tennessee drops to 22. Michigan jumps back up to 23. Utah, I didn't dock Utah a lot. I think they lost off a game-winning field goal. They lost by 3. I think it was by a game-winning field goal. I didn't watch into that game, so I dropped them like 1 or 2 spots. I don't tend to dock teams too many points if they lose a close game to a ranked team. If you get handled or blown out, then I'm going to drop you a little bit. Not even too much depending on how you lost, but if you lost by a game-winning field goal to a team on the road, I think that game was at BYU, I'm not going to dock you like that. So we still got Utah at 24. Texas, I just left them at 25 just because there really weren't any other teams that I would have jumped. I could have maybe put Illinois here. That's probably who I should have put here. That's probably who I might change that because I don't think Texas. I mean, that offense is abysmal, man. But they do have that Oklahoma win, and that's way better than any win that Illinois has. So we'll leave Texas at 25. They're hanging on by a thread, though, by an absolute thread. Can't put them any higher. They still got the win, and that Kentucky got that weird magic at Lexington against good teams where they can just keep the game close and competitive and grind it out. So we'll leave them at 25. But yeah, that is all that we have. I'm sorry, I tried my best to keep these episodes a little shorter when I say I'm going to keep them short, but if you get me talking about college football, I will go as long as I possibly. I'll make this a 3-hour episode every single time, but obviously, people are not going to listen to me talk for 3 hours. Anyways, we will end it here. If you did make it this far, I really appreciate it. Again, love college football, best sport in the world. I'm a basketball guy too. I never even played football. Basketball has always been my sport. Love the NBA. College basketball is hit or miss, but college football has always been top dog for me. College football, NBA, NFL, and then probably college basketball. But yeah, we love college football, as you can tell. So if you love college football, like, comment, subscribe, share. And we'll be back with another episode or 2 later in this week. So thank you, and I appreciate you.